Sorry. Okay. Talk a little bit about seated poses, right? So you can be feet under opposite knees, can stack heels. If neither one of those are super comfortable for you, right, you have the option to bring the legs maybe a little bit forward. What's important is that your sit bones can feel even on the floor and your spine can feel nice and tall. If you're at home or if you're here and happen to bring a prop with you, you also have the option to put a folded blanket or a cushion or a block underneath your sit bones. So it makes your hips a little higher than your legs, and sometimes that can be easier to relax. So find your seated pose, whatever that is for you. With a nice tall spine and big free breath. Breathing in and out through your nose, using the full range of your lungs, slow and deep and controlled. Feeling your body expand front to back and side to side with your breath. As you continue to breathe, it's a good time to take a little inventory of your body, see how everything feels today. Notice any parts that might feel a little tight. Maybe some parts that feel especially good today. Make sure to notice that. I think we all kind of have our usual suspects of places that we hold tension in our body. Check in with those places. Shoulders are a common one. Jaw is a real common one. And just see if you can soften a bit today to start class. For today, really imagine breathing in up our front body, getting a little bit taller on every inhale, maybe just half a millimeter, right? And then exhale, just soften the back a little bit. So imagine breathing up the front of the body and down the back of the body. Feeling the spine get tall and the chest get broad. Let's bring a little bit of movement to the head, letting the head fall front to back and side to side, maybe a few turns side to side. Just whatever gently and consciously brings space into your neck. And then let's hold a bend over to the right. So I'll mirror you here. Take your right hand to the top of your head, maybe a little bit to the left side of your head, and we'll gently pull the head down to the right. And then let's take that left arm out to the side and flex the wrist up, right? Like stop in the name of love. And then let that hand lower. They're kind of getting into that whole nerve that runs from the neck to the hand. You might have some good cracks in that left wrist that want to get out. Bring the head up to center. We'll go to the other side. So left hand on the right side of the face, gently pull it over. Keeping the shoulder heavy. And then we'll take that right arm out to the side, fingers up to start. And then just back and forth, flexing that wrist. Notice how the wrists might feel different from one another. Might have a few more cracks in your dominant hand. That's totally normal. And then we'll get into some dynamic twists here. So come back up to center. Inhale, arms out and up. Exhale, a little twist to the right here. Inhale, arms up to center. Exhale, twist left. Back and forth at your own pace, with your own breath, feeling big and expansive, energized, oxygenated. Maybe the arms stretch a little taller each time. Maybe your twists get a little bit deeper each time. Next time we're over to the right, we're going to hold the twist here. Every inhale is going to pull the top of your head just a little bit more towards the sky. And every exhale will deepen that twist just a little bit more. The length of the spine is more important than the depth of the twist here. Inhale to center, arms up. Exhale, twist left and hold. Again, using your breath to get the most out of the pose. Inhale, getting tall. Exhaling, a little bit deeper. Keeping those hips straight forward. Turn the torso back to center. Interlace the fingers behind your back. Straighten the arms and open the heart and throat forward. So now it's going to be our forehead pulling up towards the ceiling rather than the top of our head. And then going back to that breathing from the beginning where we breathe up the front of the body and down the back of the body. Just letting that chest get really expansive, front body long, consciously and gently making space in our body for our heart and our lungs to do their job. Bring everything back up to vertical. Just give yourself a moment here, letting your neck get used to regular life. And then big hands, fingers spread nice and wide on the mat in front of us. We're going to come up into a tabletop. So hands under shoulders, knees under hips. Again, fingers spread nice and wide. That helps to protect the wrists here. On the inhale, we'll let the belly drop towards the mat, hips and head float to the sky. And exhale, reverse. Back of the heart floats, hips and head hang heavy. Let's stay here for a couple breaths. Letting gravity work to make our neck longer instead of shorter like it likes to do. You might turn the head a little side to side here. That could feel really nice. And then continue movement when you're ready. So inhale, belly drops, hips and head float. Exhale, reverse, back of the heart floats, hips and head hang heavy. So back and forth with your breath. You can keep doing this so we can add just a little bit of intensity here by including the right leg. So on the inhale, belly drops, right leg comes up, leg stays bent as we look forward. Exhale, round the back and bring the knee towards the nose. Back and forth with your breath. Really slow and steady and controlled. So we're using strength and not just momentum, right? We're not just throwing our leg up in the air. Now we're going to take that right leg straight out to the side and come on up to our left knee. So we'll start by taking our right hand down the outside of the leg. Bring your left arm up and over. I like to use it to support my big heavy head. And then slide down that right leg a bit, opening up the left side body. Sending your breath to the left side body so you're intensifying the stretch from the inside. Think about the breath going to the spaces between your left ribs. And then come up to center. Take that left hand to your hip. Right arm is going to come up and just a bit over. So a little strengthening pose here. Strengthening that right side body. You decide how far over to go, but keep that foot nice and heavy on the floor. Perfect. Back to center, bring that right leg in to meet the left, and let's interlace the hands behind the back, straighten the arms, open the heart and throat forward. I have my toes tucked under for a little extra stability. And again, up the front of the body, down the back. We're undoing a lot of that slouching over today. It's feeling like gardening season out there, so I feel like this is good for us. Okay, come up to vertical, maybe a little wiggle side to side here, letting your low back acclimate. And then we'll head back to the tabletop, big hands on the mat. And inhale, belly drops, hips and head lift. Exhale, reverse. Do 2 more rounds here with your breath. And then option to add that left leg, keeping it bent. So inhale as you look forward, leg comes up. Exhale, round the back, knee towards the nose. Back and forth with your own pace, slow and controlled. You decide how far that leg comes up. Maybe it gets a little further each time. Maybe the back rounds a little bit more each time, getting that knee just a little bit closer to the nose. Let's bring that left leg out to the side and come on up to our right knee. So we'll start by opening the right side body. Right hand comes around the head, slide down that left leg. Working to keep yourself on the same plane here, like you're between 2 pieces of glass, right? So we're not here, we're not back here. Really concentrating on the side. Sending your breath there. Noticing if this side feels a little different than the other one, that's normal. And then we'll go into that strengthener on the other side. So hand to the hip, left arm up and over. You decide how far to go. You pick your intensity. But thinking about staying long, and then it's easier to be light, right? So not crunching, nice and long. This foot over here stays nice and heavy, rooting into the ground. One more big breath here. Come back to center. Bring that left knee in to meet the right. Again, with the toes tucked here. And this time we'll bring the arms out to cactus arms or goalpost arms. Thinking about the elbows pulling away from each other. So you're taking up as much space horizontally as you comfortably can. Breathe up the front of the body and down the back. So a little camel here. If you have a safe, slightly more advanced camel in your practice, you're welcome to take your hands to your low back. I like to use fists. Some of you might use upside down hands. Right? And continuing to inhale up and exhale the back. You want to keep your hips mostly forward here. Big breaths, being kind to the low back. So you want to imagine that your collarbones are light, like they're being pulled towards the sky. That keeps the low back long and not crunching here. If you have any discomfort in the low back, don't go back as far. Slowly bring yourself up to vertical. Let's untuck the toes and just sit back on our heels for a few breaths. Maybe a little shimmy side to side here, just reminding your low back that you're still friends. Come on back to the knees and we'll put the right leg forward into a low lunge. We sink the hips forward here, consciously bringing space to the front of that left hip. Arms can be overhead. If that's okay on your shoulders, otherwise down at your side is fine too. If they are overhead, think about your shoulders being soft, not necessarily pulled down, just hanging out. Strong arms. Inhale here, maybe a little back bend. And then exhale, we'll straighten the front leg. Hands can come to the top of the thigh or maybe fingertips to the mat or blocks if you brought blocks with or have blocks at home. Holding here. Now, lots of places where you can adjust this pose, right? You can decide if your foot's going to be flexed or not on the ankle. You can decide if there's a little baby bend in that right knee. You decide how heavy the torso is. You decide how heavy the head is. Kind of using those 4 points of adjustment to make this pose work perfectly for you today. Big, deep, controlled breaths, no matter where you're at. On your next inhale, we'll take the hips forward, plant the left hand, and open up the right arm to the sky. And maybe your right wrist would like a few circles here. Turn back towards the floor, one hand on either side of that front foot. Tuck the back toes. Step back to a plank, lower the knees, belly, chest, all the way to the floor. We'll bring the elbows under the shoulders and pull the upper body forward and up for a Sphinx. So tops of the feet are on the floor and they're pushing into the floor. So your leg muscles are engaged. Your kneecaps are probably off the mat, if not just light on the mat. And you're pulling forward. It's one of those poses that looks more relaxing than it actually is. On the inhale, we'll look slightly up. Exhale, let the head hang heavy, but keep the shoulders where they are. Back and forth a few times with your breath. Bring the head back to neutral on an inhale. Exhale, lower the torso down, bring the hands under the shoulders. push up to a tabletop, and then let's come up to a downward dog for a bit here. If downward dog isn't comfortable in your practice, you can sure be back on tabletop, no problem. Downward dog, we're looking for a nice long line from the fingertips to the tailbone. Maybe a little pull from the chest to the fronts of the ankles. Once you find that nice long line, if you'd like to add a little bit of movement here, you sure can. Bending one knee at a time, maybe looking under the opposite arm. You can shake and nod the head. You can come up to the tiptoes and stretch the calves a bit by bringing the heels closer to the mat. Bring your knees to the mat. Come on back to a kneeling mountain. And we'll take the left leg forward this time. Sink the hips forward so we're really consciously bringing space to the front of that right hip. Lengthening out all of that connective tissue that gets short when we sit. And then you choose, arms can stay down or they can come up. If they come up, just be kind to your shoulders. So it's not a huge reach, right? Shoulders are soft, arms are strong. Big, deep, controlled breaths. Nice time to check in with your jaw. Make sure you're not holding any extra tension there. Inhale here, maybe a little back bend. And exhale, straighten that front leg. Hands can come to the top of the thigh or to the floor or to blocks. Half split. Ardha Hanumasana. Again, using your joints to adjust the pose to work perfectly for you today. So I like to think of it as like stretching a rubber band, right? You don't want to just stretch one little place. You want to stretch the whole connective tissue, the whole area from the heel up the back of the leg all the way to the back and the head. And if there's one part of that that feels like it's getting most of the stretch, what happens if you adjust a little bit? One more big deep breath here. Go ahead and bring the hips forward, plant the right hand, inhale the left to the sky. And maybe give that left hand a few twists and turns and stretches. Our wrists just don't get enough attention, I feel. Turn back towards the floor, hands frame the front foot, tuck the back toes, step back to a plank. You can choose to hold here for a couple breaths. You can put the knees on the mat and hold here for a couple breaths, just building a little bit of core strength here. Top of the head pulling forward, heels pulling back. And then from wherever you're at, we'll slowly lower down. Keep your hands where they are this time. Flip the feet, engage the legs, pushing down into the floor. And on the inhale, we lift up into a low cobra. So really engaging the back muscles here. Exhale, lower down. Inhale, lift. Exhale, lower. So continuing with your own breath at your own pace. And if you want a little more of a challenge, the hands can float when the head comes up. It's totally up to you. That works a little bit more on strength. If you'd like to work a little bit more on flexibility, you could keep the hands on the floor and maybe push up a little higher. But if you push up higher, try to match the work from the back to the arms. So we're not just doing push-ups. You decide what works best for your body today. Please honor it. You're here to nurture yourself, not to beat yourself up. Inhale, lift wherever you're at. Exhale, lower down. Tuck the toes, come to a tabletop. And then tuck the toes, keep them tucked and raise the hips to a downward dog. And we'll walk the hands back to the feet, giving ourselves a forward fold here with bent knees. You could have your elbows on your knees if you like. That could be really comfortable. You could set the torso right on the thighs if that's comfortable and hang the head anywhere in between. What I'm looking for is spaciousness in your low back. You could be up here too. Imagine you can send your breath into your low back here. Feeling it expand every time you inhale. And then push the feet down in the floor to slowly roll up to stand. Bring the arms out and up. Hands together, little back bend. Exhale, hands through heart center and to your side. Mountain pose. So feet are hips width distance. Top of the spine nice and long. Shoulders are soft. Facial muscles are soft. Send the weight a little forward and a little back, just noticing where the weight is distributed on your feet. It's kind of a fun thing to work on when you're just like waiting in line at the grocery store, right? Can you spread your toes a little bit like they're trying to fit into a pair of shoes that are too big? Giving yourself a really solid base. Let's heel toe the feet apart a bit. So be a little wider than hips width distance, and our toes are further apart than our heels. Right? Inhale, lengthen the spine, and then exhale, sit down a bit. It might just be a bit. Your hips might be even with your knees. Spine stays nice and tall. Let's keep our hands on our thighs so the fingers are pointing down towards the floor. You can straighten the arms if you like. Weight distributed evenly in the feet. Legs are nice and strong here. And then let's add some twists. So take your right shoulder towards the mat as you turn to look over your left shoulder. And then switch. Back and forth. You decide how far to turn. You're nursing a shoulder injury. It might not be quite as far. If this feels really nice and you'd like a little bit more, the shoulder that's forward, you could rotate the fingers in towards the pelvis. That will give you a lot more feels in the shoulder, but only if that feels good. No pain in the shoulder. You choose, just an option. Come back to center. Are you ready to straighten your legs yet? Yeah? Okay, straighten the legs. Turn the toes forward. Give yourself a little walk side to side. Thank your legs for all their work. And we'll make our way to a seat. So you can just sit down if you want to. If you'd like to come with me through a flow, I'll lead us through a flow. But we'll meet and seated no matter where you're at, okay? If you'd like to come with, we'll come to the front of our mats. Inhale, arms out and up, hands together, little back bend. Exhale, come down through heart center, all the way to the floor. Inhale, halfway lift with a long back. Exhale, fold. Plant the hands, step back to plank. Exhale, lower to your belly. Flip the feet, inhale, cobra. Exhale, lower down, tuck the toes, downward dog. And then bring your knees to the mat, cross the feet, and catch up with everybody else who just sat down. Perfect. Let's bring the soles of the feet together for Baddha Konasana. So a couple ways you can adjust this. It will be more intense the closer your feet are to your pelvis, right? So this is harder than this is. And then how heavy your knees are will also adjust the intensity. Give the bottoms of your feet a little bit of love while you're right here. Kind of like your wrists, they don't get enough attention. You might find a spot that was a little sore that you didn't even know about. Inhale, lengthen the spine. Exhale, fold forward. Now you might just be on your hands. You could be on your forearms. You could have nose to toes, anywhere in between. But I would like you to think of just being heavy, not pushing anything down. We're just getting out of the way of gravity, trying to soften. And again, you can always adjust feet a little further away from the body. If you brought props or you have props at home, you could also stuff cushions or blocks or blankets under the knees for a little extra support. Big, deep, controlled breaths, creating space in the hips and space in the low back. Soft face. Really trying to keep your mind with your body here, not on the next thing you're going to do after class, right? Push your hands into the mat. Push down to bring yourself vertical. Take your hands to the outside of your knees and close your knees like a book. We're going to take our hands behind us with our fingertips towards our hips and lean back a little bit, like so. So I'll give you a few different options here. First is to keep the hips on the floor just as is, and we'll bring the right knee towards the chest. Take that leg straight out, and then back to where you started. Left knee towards the chest, straight out, back to where you started. So just going back and forth. This is a great place to be. Keeping the spine long, so you're engaging your core here, so it's not just your back, right? If you'd like a little more intensity, you can do this with the hips off the ground. Right knee in, straight out, back to where you started. And you decide how high the hips are, right? They could be straight up, they could be kind of in between. Make sure your fingers are spread nice and wide on the mat to help support the weight of your body. And again, both ways are right, hips up or hips down. You can go back and forth too. We'll do one more round on each side. Your hips are up. Let's lower. Cross the legs. Come up to vertical, especially if you had your hips up. We want to give our wrists a little bit of love. I'd like to take my fingers towards each other and then set the back of the wrists on the mat and wiggle the fingers. All right. Come up to vertical and we'll make our way to our backs. We'll take the soles of the feet on the floor and you decide how long it takes you. The longer it takes you, the more intense it is. You can just lay down if you want, or if you want to get a little more core intensity on the way there, you bring the arms forward and really slowly lower yourself. Be happy you don't have to talk as you're doing this. Okay. Once you make your way to your back, bring your arms out to your side in a T. And then bring the feet a little bit closer to your hips, and they'll be a little bit wider than the hips. Knees up towards the ceiling. And treat yourself to some windshield wipers, lowering the knees left and right at whatever pace feels great. Take your time. Sometimes I find that it makes the stretch even better when the knee that's on top, when you're over to the side, pushes away from your face a little bit. So towards your feet. So when the knees are to the right, the left knee pushes a little forward, kind of getting into that left hip flexor a little bit. Just an option. Next time your knees are to the left, let's hang out there. Turn the face to the right. If you have a different variation that you really like to use for your recline twists in your legs, feel free to do that. If you'd like to stack those legs to the left instead, you could do that. You could cross that right leg under, a little more intense. One way is not better than the other. They just stretch different areas. Again, just letting everything be heavy. Bring everything up to center. And we're going to give our feet a little bit of attention. So bring your feet up. They could be towards the ceiling. If that's not comfortable for you, you could support your thighs with your hands under your thighs. If that's also not comfortable, you could even have just your feet on the floor. We're really going to work on the flexibility of our ankles and toes. So no matter where your feet are, we're going to bring our big toes only towards our face, the rest of the toes away from us. Maybe you have just a little bit of space there. Maybe you have a lot. And then maybe a little harder, we're going to switch big toes away from us, the rest of the toes towards you. I'm sorry for any foot cramps. Some of you, that little toe can join the big toe away from you. Maybe not. Something to work on during your next Netflix binge, right? Bring the toes in line and then see if you can spread them a little wide, like a duck. Just a little bit of space between each one. Maybe not. Just something to work towards. Especially think about pulling your big toes towards each other, right? That engages the arch of the foot. It's really good for foot health. Okay, release, bend the toes, straighten the toes, give your ankles a few circles. We'll bring the feet back to the floor for more windshield wipers. Again, whatever pace feels great. And this time, when the knees are to the right, we turn the head to the left. Again, feel free to change variation on the legs if you like. Totally up to you, whatever feels best in your body today. And just let everything settle. Big, deep breaths, soft face, soft jaw. Bring everything back to center, and then we'll end with a back stretch of your choice. So you could bring your knees in towards your chest, or if you have a happy baby in your practice, you could come into that. In either one of these poses, stillness is great. But I really like to rock a little bit side to side in these back stretches, kind of using body weight to Massage the low back, massage your kidney area, can feel really nice. And then when you're ready, you'll find resting pose for a few minutes. If you have another pose or movement that would feel good in your body before you're ready to relax, please feel free to do so. Otherwise, Shavasana will bring feet hips width distance and take those toes out to the side. If you brought props or you have props at home, it might feel nice to put a blanket or a cushion under the knees. And then arms come a little bit out to the side, palms up. And even think about tucking those shoulder blades a little bit under. Maybe we go back to that circular breath from the beginning, breathing up the front of the body and down the back. If you're a little woo-woo like I am, maybe you think breathing up the front of the chakras and down the back of the chakras. Even if you don't believe in that, it's fun to use your imagination, right? I recently found a book called Enchantment by Catherine May. And I just think it's really lovely. I haven't read the whole thing yet, but cool quote that I'd like to share with you. She says, enchantment is a small wonder magnified through meaning, fascination caught in the web of fable and memory. It relies on small doses of awe, almost homeopathic, those quiet traces of fascination that are found only when we look for them. It is the sense that we are joined together in one continuous thread of existence with the elements constituting this earth, and that there is a potency trapped in this interconnection, a tingle on the border of our perception. It is a forgotten seam in our geology, the elusive particle that binds our unstable matter, the ability to sense magic in the everyday, to channel it through our minds and bodies, to be sustained by it. Without it, I feel I'm lacking some essential nutrient, a vitamin only found when you go digging in your own soil. So this week, can we find a little more enchantment in the everyday? Looking at things with maybe more childlike eyes. Go ahead and introduce some movement back into the body. Start to deepen your breath. You can roll over to your right hand side. Take a breath or two there. When you're ready, emerging up to a seated position, hands at heart center. Take your time. Thank you so much for joining me today to share your practice and your energy with me and with each other. Peace starts within. That means the whole world benefits a bit because you took the time for yoga today. The light in me honors the light in you. Namaste. All right. Thank you.